Night enveloped the city, covering every corner and every street with darkness. Only the lights from the houses illuminated the street, creating an incredibly romantic atmosphere in the city. "I like you," I whispered, barely audible. "I think I fell in love with you," I said, nervously tucking a lock of hair behind my ear and lowering my gaze awkwardly. "Why?" said the young man uncertainly. He was confused and embarrassed by my confession. You couldn't see his eyes, but you could tell from his lips how surprised he was. "Well, I like the way you look when you smile. I like the way you watch over me." Confessions poured out of me in an unstoppable stream, and I like how brave you are as a knight. Also, I wanted to continue, but got choked up, realizing that he was standing silently. Why is he silent? Why doesn't he say anything? I'm embarrassed. Oh, it's probably true, I thought feverishly. He doesn't feel the same way about me. A lot of thoughts swarmed in my head. I got nervous. I drank a little alcohol to build up my courage and be a little more relaxed, but it only seemed to make my condition worse. I expected it, but it still affects me a little. Now that I think about it, he has a low voice. His height looks quite different too, but more importantly, the color of his hair. I came closer and leaned on his shoulder. Wait, isn't there anything strange about this situation? I was overcome with fear and indescribable horror that I had made a terrible mistake. Who am I hugging? Who did I just confess my love to? It was a beautiful, tall, and handsome young man. Keble Willard is the commander of the knights in this empire, the heir to the Duchy of Willard. And he was also known for the dark side of his character, a reaper on the battlefield. And without even realizing it, I made a big mistake that could not be corrected now. So, it all started when I died in my past life. The circumstances were mundane, but my consciousness was teleported into this dimension. Reaper on the battlefield is Keble Willard is a handsome young man, eyes and dark hair. But the crown prince and commander of the Order of Holy Knights, he was the complete opposite of Keble. He had blonde hair and gentle and always smiling light eyes. "Hello, Priestess Renesha," he addressed me. I wonder if it was a problem that I was sent with these two men. He was called the Light of the Empire, a man who was truly worthy of being called that. After all, his whole appearance reflected kindness and frankness, clarity of mind and sincerity. A very pretty face, needless to say. It was impossible not to fall in love with him at first sight. But it is all because of this sinful man. Wait, isn't there anything strange in this situation? I thought again, frightened. Of course he would feel disgusted with me, but I had to admit to him that I mistook him for someone else. Better late than never. To be honest, I'm very drunk right now, sir. I should have said that's why I'm talking all kinds of nonsense. My confession was intended for another man. But I remained silent. "Keble," he said, not taking his dark eyes off me, "Keble. From now on, call me by my name." "I'm sorry. Did I apologize?" Looking at him in surprise, I couldn't believe my ears, but I was surprised by his calm tone and gentle voice. "Renee," he repeated. He was smiling at me. I didn't believe my own Keble. I whispered in a daze and realized that he probably likes me. His lips, which were always tightly pressed in a gloomy grimace, smiled at me and spoke gently. I felt that if he had found out the truth about my false confession, he would have killed me on the spot. The sky was overcast and it was clearly going to rain. "Stop looking at the sky and start taking off the blankets, okay?" I heard Lily's voice breaking into my thoughts. "Lily, do you think the client will come today or not?" I said thoughtfully, looking at the sky. Lily, who was dutifully removing clean blankets from the rope at that moment, said equal sign, "I'm not sure, but doesn't he come every time it rains?" "By the way," Lily continued, "how long will you continue to call Herzog a client?" I said uncertainly, and began to actively help her to distract myself from my thoughts. "But he really is a client, isn't he?" My eyes sparkled cheerfully at the mention of Herzog. It was impossible to hide my joy and admiration. In fact, he is the only customer who finances our temple and gives money so that we can feed ourselves. "If the high priest hears that you say something like that, he will reprimand you," said Lily instructively. "Ha ha ha," I laughed. "He already reprimanded me." While removing the blankets, I continued to think, I wonder how many hours he will come today. But if I make one more mistake in front of a client today, I think I might actually die. Once, I already died, but I don't want it to happen again. There is nothing special about it. I came to this world with memories of my past life. Some girls die tragically in the unfortunate cases and wake up in the body of the thief from the novel, or they fall into the body of a minor noblewoman. They can make a choice to live a calm and quiet life, regardless of the plot of the book, or they can win the heart of a secondary character. Of course, my case is very different from the ones I mentioned. I died on the way home. In my past life, I worked in the school library until late at night. I was walking down a dark alley when I was hit by a car that couldn't stop. After completing my task, I was like a zombie and could not avoid a collision. All this happened because of that stupid task. Every night, I stayed late at work, thereby undermining my health and ruining my life. Anyway, I remembered with a smile when I first came to my senses here. I was very hungry. I looked terrible. My clothes were all torn. I was afraid to go outside, to people, and I did not see someone who could become my guardian. I walked with my bare feet through the cold puddles, but I thought that I didn't even have a home, where I could go, where I could get warm and eat. The body I had belonged to an orphan who didn't even know her name. That meant it's a cliché that happens in all fantasy novels, moving through dimensions. Although I understood what had happened to me, I had no chance to wonder because I was very hungry. Has it been 4 days already? Will this alley become my grave? I was lying in the middle of the street and said to myself, "Hey baby, I don't know your name, but let's go to a better place together." To be honest, I was neither good nor bad in this life. I cried, wondering if I could go to heaven because I had lived such a sad life. Closing my eyes, I must have lost consciousness and had a dream about paradise. Through the dream, I heard a voice. "Are you okay?" I was wrong. I managed to survive. I heard the bells ringing in the temple. Opening my eyes, I saw a priest praying next to my bed, and someone gently said to me, "You were sick for several days, so Priest Timoteo took care of you. Since you have nowhere to go, why don't you stay in the temple?" asked me. A silent question was visible in my eyes, and I did not believe in what was happening. And for some reason, I was almost convinced that I was an atheist. But for the sake of myself, for the sake of my life, I was ready to believe in anything and anyone. After all, as long as they feed me, I was ready to do anything for them. This is how I spent 13 years in the temple. Gods actually exist. When, lying in bed, I could not recover for a long time, a priest came to my aid. Some priests really heal with divine power. Oh, and the temple I was in, which was called El Nur, does not have clerics who have powerful divine power, and few of the faithful have ever seen such a thing. The temple provided education and training to orphans, despite the fact that the only source of money was social funding. Money was not much, but thanks to even this funding, we never had to starve. I spent a quiet and peaceful childhood with other orphans in the temple, thankful that I had at least some shelter. Back then, I immediately became friends with Lily, and we have been roommates for 10 years. And here came my 17th winter. Priest Timoteo approached me and said, "Renee, I brought you here, and now you can go your way, or if you want, you can stay. The empire in which I live is experiencing an era of peace. The temple doesn't get a lot of money, so I could make a lot more if I left the temple and started my own business." Precisely because many churches, in addition to the state religion of Abnol, were in a precarious position. I smiled to myself and thought, what do I usually say in these situations? I will stay in the temple. I don't want to go and live a hard life. What is the problem? I can't even look at it. I just want to be safe. In order to stay, I had to go through the rite of initiation. Only later did I realize that my choice was too bad. On the day of my baptism, I had to undergo a rite of divine power measurement, which measured the crystal layer. Oh, something, really, from the world of fantasy, I thought, and touched the layer. And it turned out that the problem was with my powerful divine power. The sphere began to shine brightly, illuminating everything around, which blinded the eyes. And I'm not kidding when I say she's incredibly powerful. Everyone around was shocked by what they saw. I was stronger than the priest number 1 in our temple. My strength was equal to the strength of Abnol priests. Looking at my hand that held immense magic, I thought that I had lost my best chance to leave the temple, and it was right. Smiling to myself, I decided that I got it, and now I have become an exemplary servant of the temple. And these thoughts inspired me a lot. I became an important person for the church, but this meant that I was doomed. Priest Timoteo was one of the first to bring me to receive the high priests, and if I was a person of inferior origin, then this priest and I were received with special courtesy. They sent me to very profitable places and considered it normal. Everyone bowed before me, called me Nadia El Noura. I awkwardly looked away but only smiled. I was sent to very dangerous areas to earn money. It was very dangerous there. Having removed all the blankets, Lily was going to go into the temple premises. I kept thinking about the Greek. How merciful and compassionate he should be. These very thoughts made me sad. I was very tired, carrying a heavy basket with blankets. I groaned, "Lily, do you still have work for today?" "Yes, it remains for me to prepare a room for the Duke." "Wow, I'm so excited for you," I said tiredly. "Why be jealous here? Frankly surprised, Lily. I will have to sit in the room and do nothing." "The problem is just sitting in place," I answered her. "Imagine how it is to sit across from a sleeping person who can kill you for the slightest rustle. If you make a sound and accidentally wake him up, you will die instantly." "No, he is not one of those who can kill a person so easily, is he?" Lily said, with hope in her voice. "He is simply the commander of the Imperial Knights." His belligerent look spoke for itself, so I'm still a little worried. "Do you think he could really kill a person because of irritation?" I reasoned out loud. "Aren't you a priestess representing El Noor? Sure, if the gossip is to be believed, the Duke can kill you with the snap of his finger, but wouldn't that get him into big trouble?" "Yes, indeed." Satisfied, I smiled. I understood, for him, killing someone like me would be too troublesome. You have to think positively. "Thank you for the good advice," I said cheerfully to Lily. "No way." "Oh, Renee, it seems like it's starting to rain. Bend over and don't let the basket with things get wet." I suddenly compared myself to a basket and decided that my significance was lower than his. My significance, in comparison with the mood of the Duke, is extremely small. And now I generally give in to some inanimate blankets and probably committing a crime by comparing the two, but it's so humiliating. What am I thinking about? For me, my life is more important than anything. He is not the one who can kill a person just like that, I thought with hope. In a dark room, I tried to light an extinguished candle. It was very dark and cold around, and the matches did not want to light. The silence was broken by the soft clinking of matches against the box. Suddenly, someone grabbed my hand. I froze in fright, waiting for what would happen next, and in my mind, I had already said goodbye to life, because I had broken the silence. The look of his dark blue eyes was clearly not very kind, but watchful and interested. I believed that they would not kill me, although my hope was like this small match. The match fell from my hand, and as it fell, it began to die out, as did my hope. There was a tension in the darkness that echoed too loudly from the walls, but it was all just my imagination. I stood soaked through from the rain, drops of water running from my hair to my face, as if washing me. It was cold and uncomfortable. But looking at my basket of sheets, I was glad to note that it had all remained dry, despite the fact that I was completely wet as a mop. "Sister, take a towel." One of our girls ran up to me and handed me a towel. Lily tapped me on the shoulder. "Don't drill the blankets with your gaze. I thought that I should have pretended to fall from such a blow." "Renee," called Lily to me, who was also shivering from the cold. She was also all wet. "Yes," I answered tiredly and thought that she would probably crush my body trying to wake me up. "Renee," I heard again. We took the towels from our little sister's hands and happily wiped our wet faces. "Who is this?" I looked around in surprise. It was the high priest. He smiled happily at me and said, "My dear, you are probably completely wet and very cold. Lily, there is still some time left before the arrival of the guests, so go change your clothes," he addressed Lily. "Of course, sir. Let's go, girls," ordered Lily. At that moment, I was inspired to carefully comb my hair. Suddenly, the high priest grabbed my shoulder and sharply pulled me behind him. I involuntarily rolled. I almost fell. "I got wet too. Let me change my clothes too," I shouted, feeling how the high priest was pushing me hard on the back. To be honest, even at the moment when the high priest called me, I already had an idea of what was to happen next. They will probably give me a job. Although I said work, it's more like using me. The priest sat directly in front of me with his hands folded and his eyes closed. At that moment, the lightning made everything very bright, Renee, he said quietly, and fell silent again, as if collecting his thoughts. Just quickly tell me what task I have to go to. I'm getting scared. Why does he create such an atmosphere that is completely unlike his typical behavior? To be honest, he continued quietly, I always sent you on tasks that were too difficult. I shouted in surprise. Yes, you are. You always knew about it. After the lightning, suddenly there was such a terrible roar of thunder, I screamed in fright. What is this? What's up with this weather? What is this strange atmosphere? Now it's my turn to try to respect your choice, continued the priest Renee. You do know where the kingdom of Vios is, don't you? Yes. This is the small kingdom that is located to the south of Kodun. Now that I thought about it, I remembered that I heard that their economy is not in the best condition. The priest continued. Yes, that's right, this is the kingdom, and it announced the beginning of the war. I opened my mouth in surprise and fear. Instead of fighting the current economic situation, they decided to start a war? In the past, we had no reason to conflict with Vios, so the border defenses in the south were relaxed. They took advantage of this weakness and successfully attacked us. Wait, even that would be their option. How could they go for that? The kingdom of Vios is 1/10 of our empire. It is a very, very small kingdom indeed. That is why the capital decided to send reinforcements. They will send the leader of the Paladin Knights, Abnel and Duke Willard. Wait, why did they decide to send only these two to defeat this small nation? By the way, isn't the leader of the Paladin Knights, Abnelu, a prince? His place is on the throne. This will not be just an appeal to those who crossed the border, the priest explained to me. They are also considering the option of capturing Vios and joining it with the empire. I felt that I did not quite understand what the speech was about, and smiled to myself. So, what is needed from the church? I asked. Now I understood why he dragged out the conversation so much. I put my head in my hands. I think what to do with all this now, and what I have to do with it. For certain positions, the priest smiled mysteriously. He tried to be calm and confident, although there was a kind of unpleasant, depressing feeling in this situation. Stop it. I thought I was not happy at all, and I feverishly thought that I must have been recognized after all. A very quick recognition, I would say. We promised to send 20 healers, he finally admitted, and for some reason suddenly stopped smiling. Sweat dripped profusely on his forehead. If they need only 20 men, then Abnel's temple can easily provide them. In addition, if the commander-in-chief of the Paladin Knights will also participate, Abnel will support them. That's right. However, there was an order stating that they could not accept healers from only one temple. Therefore, other temples should also provide support. The priest suddenly cheered up, but confidently said, This is just a small country. Moreover, as you already said, the commander-in-chief of the Paladin Knights and the general of the Imperial Knights will also participate. It will be a safe war. There is nothing to worry about. I also smiled back at him and answered clearly, I refuse. She said how she cut it off. The priest, not expecting this from me, was clearly confused. Renee, think about it well. There shouldn't be many wounded safe war, you say? I shook my head in denial. Don't talk about it like non-existent things like hot ice. The priest panicked. He did not expect such pressure from me. I am a person who wants security more than anyone else. A safe life is the best life. What did they tell me in my past life? That I should be a purposeful teenager? Because of this desire, or something else, I lived my life listening to nonsense and being taught that even if I was being exploited, I should think of it as a life experience. This time I protest and want a simple and indifferent life, receiving only the most basic knowledge of treatment. Why should people strive for something in order to live? Aspiration and imagination. Unlimited fantasy. They said that it is impossible for me because I do not make any effort. To my surprise, I gained tremendous strength. Fortunately, El Nur is not so famous, which is why I am not called to work so often. Of course, wherever you go in this world, no, rather in the dimension, even if you are a simple worker, you will be treated like a slave. Renee smiled her bright working smile and assured, but I can handle it. Now I am completely satisfied with my life path. So how can I enjoy life now if he sends me to war? Before this, I used my powers to heal sick aristocrats. And now he's telling me to use them throughout the war to heal dying people? Besides, I don't want it, so it's definitely going to be a long ride, Father. I finally said, I am afraid of war. I don't want to be in a situation where people's lives will completely depend on me. Hoping for understanding, I looked imploringly into the priest's face. You said that you respect my choice, right? If so, don't force me. I would prefer to do something else during this time. The priest patiently listened to me and answered, There will be payment, I'm sorry? I was surprised. I did not expect this. 300 gold, answered the priest, smiling. If this campaign succeeds, that is, ideally, everyone should be given 300 gold. 300 gold, so you understand, was equal to 3 months' savings of the temple priest. For ordinary people, this is usually too much money. I probably answered with too much optimism. Healers should not allow injury on the battlefield. The priest, somewhat surprised, mumbled, Renee, but I was already overcome by such. From the amount I heard, it was really a lot of money. I just beamed from what I heard. I was taught that this is the role of those who deal with the enemy. The priest was even a little embarrassed by this turn of events, because I unexpectedly changed my opinion in the opposite direction. Someone will say, How can you be so venal? I don't remember teaching you that, he muttered. But the amount was really too big for such words. I will go, I said confidently, I will go. No matter what, these 300 zlotys will be mine. I have already started to count in my mind. 300 gold, temple savings plus other savings and the like. I was full of joy. And even so, after counting, the balance remained simply huge. In my imagination, jewels and diamonds began to circle around me. I was over the moon with happiness just from dreams of a good life. Ha ha, the priest coughed, thoughtfully rubbing his beard. Didn't you say a minute ago that you were afraid? He was a little scared by my state of euphoria and desire to get a lot of money. Yes, but with this lightning, divine enlightenment descended on me. I realized that I had to live to save other people's lives. It doesn't matter if it's hierarchy or democracy, the real variable is materialism. I consider myself fully prepared for the struggle, I'm telling you. I am trying to say that I want to live a simple life without big and significant changes. But since money has ruled the world since ancient times, if one wants to become noble, one needs a great fortune. Therefore, if I become rich, I can become a saint of this religion. In my mind, I already imagine myself as a priest who helps a large number of people and gives them hope for life. I also imagine myself in a big, beautiful city where I could study and enjoy life. If I get rich, I won't have problems with assignments and exams anymore, right? I could easily use it at school and go to a cafe with a book every day. I could even become the owner of a coffee shop that everyone would admire. Dreaming like that, I got up and headed for the exit. The door creaked for a long time, reminding me that it is still too early to dream of great achievements, although this is my dream, which I would not have been able to fulfill in my past life. But I will confidently move forward and do everything to make it happen in this life, in this dimension. But for this, you still need to work well and hard, even risking his own life. To begin with, I need to go and get ready for a meeting. I decided that I need to act gradually. Not everything works out at once. For starters, I need to change by the time the customer arrives. Although my dress had dried while we were talking with the priest, it was still dirty. I thought about my client that since he has a lot of financial support and is also going to go to war, it wouldn't be too bad if I got a little closer to him. And in that case, if we already know each other, will he save me if I suddenly find myself in a difficult situation? I reasoned, throwing off my dirty laundry. I was a little afraid of him. One look from him made me sick, and goosebumps ran over my skin. If, of course, he doesn't kill me before that, because I will annoy him? My heart was pounding so much with fear, I think it could be heard in the whole room. Lily looked at me questioningly, waiting for me to tell about the conversation with the priest. I decided to casually ask my friend, Lily, will you join the war as a healer? To which she answered yes without thinking. Lily had the second rank in divine powers, unlike my first. Are you not afraid? I looked back at her in surprise. She immediately agreed without even asking or clarifying anything. Brave. No, she answered calmly. Because the head of the Paladin Knights and the commander-in-chief of the Knights will also be there, A healer who quietly hides, staying in the back of the camp, doesn't need to worry much about this. I was still so afraid that ants ran all over my body. I was very worried about all this, but Lily seemed so calm. But healers are very important for the military, so they wouldn't kill us. Will everything really be okay? Won't we die? To tell the truth, to be a priest, it is not even necessary to have healing powers. In order to become a priest, you just need to come to the temple, and if you have at least some divine abilities, you can become a specialized priest. After that, there is a test of abilities, where it is discovered whether a person has healing powers. After their discovery, a person is given the title of a healer, and they begin to treat him with special care. Healers are also called healing mages. However, the ratio of priests is extremely high, to the point that there is even a special professional healer guild for travelers outside the empire. The guild is called Gloria, located in a large castle. If someone is accepted into Gloria, then he becomes a healer who is closely connected with the empire. You have military experience. Wouldn't it be useful to tell about it when joining Gloria? Suggested Lily. I replied that I don't think so. Just think, in this place you also need to get a qualification. I could barely contain myself from the tension. Lily sees all this as another extracurricular task. No, it's better to say it's like an internship in the empire. So what were you talking about? Lily turned to me, interrupting my thoughts. It seems like she could take advantage of that by presenting going to war as an experience of overcoming adversity, listing it on her resume. You are also going to war. Lily finally decided to find out from me. I have no reason to refuse when they promised to give 300 gold. So you are because of the money, Lila drawled disappointedly, and buried herself in her book, continuing to read. Listening to her turn the pages of the book in the sudden silence, I did not understand why she was so disappointed. Suddenly I remembered that Lily always suggested that we enter Gloria together. If I enter this place, my busyness will be much greater than now, and I don't really want to go there, since there will be many tasks that will require me to travel throughout the empire. Suddenly, Lilia got up and spoke angrily. With your abilities, are you really going to be unemployed all your life? Lily, how much she doesn't understand what I went through before my eyes. Pictures flashed from my short but already unhappy life. I just wanted peace. To be unemployed and rich is the dream of many people. Of course, my dream is not to work hard and earn money, but to simply have money. And for Lily, this is a way to get a qualification. She wants to gain a lot of experience and knowledge in order to use it in her work. For me, this is a way to make money. But, it seems, both reasons sound rather sad, and they both carried danger. That's why both go through war, so this path must be passed anyway, in order to realize any dream. But not everything is so bad. Do what you want. Lily shrugged her shoulders indifferently and continued reading the book. Not wanting to distract her, I decided to go out. Oh, and did you write your name correctly in the questionnaire, and? She shouted after me. Priest Timoteo checked him right in front of me. How many years have passed since that mistake, and you still continue to laugh at me because of it? I answered. Offended Lily laughed softly. I hope she's joking. All this has a sad background. It happened when I first woke up in this dimension and became an orphan. I felt so happy to be dressed in the most beautiful dress in the world. It was just beautiful. Remembering my lashes I had, it was the most beautiful and most comfortable outfit. I was very satisfied. It was the first time I wore such chic clothes. The world around was beautiful. I was happy. Suddenly they asked me, "What is your name?" Surprisingly, I did not know the name. Is my name? I asked again. That's just my name, asked Priest Timoteo. Oh, that's right. He suddenly realized that I didn't know him. I stood and did not remain silent, not knowing what to answer him, because everything was not at all the way he probably thought. Do you mind if I give you a name? He suggested. Anyway, I didn't know the real name of my body, nor can I call myself a name from my past life, as that would sound quite strange. No, I want to give myself a name, I firmly decided. At that moment, I felt this way for the first time. I realized that I really found myself in another world. From the moment I entered the temple, I decided to start living in a new way. I was satisfied with the fact that I was taken care of. I was given clothes, a roof over my head, and food. Everything was new and beautiful, so the name had to be new as well. The priest was so moved that he almost cried, so of course he let me choose my own name and agreed that it was a very good idea after all. But that was the wrong reason. El-Nur takes care of this young believer? Yes, yes, so to begin with, we will teach you to read and write, the priest said gently, taking his hands. I was infinitely grateful to him, and of course I agreed. My real reason is much simpler than you think. Is it difficult to learn to read and write? It definitely felt like I was in a fantasy world. The world of books was exciting and bright, and therefore, why not come up with a very cool name? It's like in a computer game. To start the game, you need to come up with a new name for the character. Looking at my image in the mirror, I tried to draw my character. Light brown hair and green eyes. Nothing came to mind. After looking in the mirror for 3 days, choosing a suitable name for myself, I decided that I looked pretty decent for the name Renessa. And since I became a priestess, my full name now became Renessa El-Nur. It is quite a decent name. Even the priest approved, saying that it is a very good name. But the problem is that I could not write. All my pens did not hold in my hands or broke. Writing such a name was quite difficult. Pens and paper were damaged during training. A simpler name? I said, putting on a blouse and feeling that I was stuck. Lily laughed quietly at me. Is it possible to copy part of Lily's name and use Lulul? Is it possible to make it even shorter, Nene? I continued. Suddenly, we heard a knock. We fell silent, listening to where the sound came from. We listened intently to the night silence, afraid to breathe. Looking out the window, I did not see anything in the dark, except for the rain that rattled on the glass. Lily, there is still time before the client's arrival, so don't forget to change your clothes first, I reminded my friend. Wait, because the time when the client was supposed to come has almost arrived? I got shivers, no, I whispered doomedly, looking out the window. We were terribly late. The carriage was already on its way to the yard, and we heard this knocking. What time is it now? We talked so much that we completely forgot about time. I heard the door slam and I was called. I ran as fast as I could through the corridors. Ever since it was revealed that I have considerable divine power, the flow of visitors to our temple has greatly increased. But even so, the top of the nobility still prefers to deal with abnal priests. Therefore, compared to them, we did not have many visitors. The only thing that kept us competitive was the price we had to charge less money for treatment as well. We tried to make money, but it only caused financial instability. However, about 3 years ago, El-Nur found a patron peeking out from the door. I asked breathlessly, "Has he arrived yet?" I remembered what they said about him, that he had won many victories in the war from a young age. It is said that the blade of his sword is always stained with blood, which is why he was called the Grim Reaper of Battles. He stood in front of the priest, tall and handsome. The priest turned to me and asked Renee, "What are you doing there?" Inviting me to enter the room. Caber Willard. He is the head of the Duchy of Willard and the commander-in-chief of the Knights of the Empire. He looked at me with his gloomy dark eyes, from the look of which I trembled all over. Finally, I entered the room, hunched over awkwardly. "Oh, welcome," I mused. I did not want to provoke the anger of the guest for being late. "I apologize for being late. I'm really sorry," I said, bowing my head to the Duke and feeling guilty, because he is our top client. A cloud of gloom and anger clearly hovered over him. The sisters around me retreated in fear. I hope I will survive today, I thought. But he really comes here very often. He comes here to sleep. Why? At first I was amazed myself. He was very exhausted. He needed to regain his strength. Therefore, the reason was obvious. There was no need to even ask. Only some nobles turn to the temple if they have trouble sleeping. Using divine powers to fight insomnia is a luxury not everyone can afford, but most turn to Abnul. He was the first to turn to El-Nur. Maybe because it was too noisy there from a large number of people, I thought to myself. And there could be problems if rumors spread that he was visiting the temple. Now that I think about it, as I walk him down the hall, I get the feeling that he sacrificed a huge amount of money to maintain privacy. It is for this reason that the room at the very end of this corridor is very much his personal. This is the room in which I can die one day, I thought, and said aloud, "We have already prepared your room." I tried to be kind and smiled kindly. Inviting him to the room, he was too gloomy and pensive to pay attention to me. Or maybe just tired. Although I almost died once, I suddenly remembered. It's hard to forget that time Duke Caber Willard is a master who can use various sword energy techniques. It is very rare that this happens, even in the Empire. It is because of this that he has extremely heightened sensations. You can call it strange, but at first I could not know it. And once at night, when the candle went out, I got up to light it. After striking a match, I felt someone grab my hand. It was so unexpected that I dropped the match and jumped to the side without looking where I was flying. I almost crashed into the wall then, but the Duke held me so I wouldn't fall. Then I narrowly avoided a collision by stumbling. But I think of it every time I see the Duke, and I get cold shivers from the fear of what if he didn't stop then. After all, it could end badly. After that incident, I always sit quietly, like a stone statue, whenever he comes. He even responded to any sound. After so many trials and errors, I was afraid to even read books. After all, I once woke him up with a rustle when I turned the page. Therefore, I decided to use this time for meditation. He's intimidating and constantly ignores my attempts to talk to him, probably because he thinks I'm too loud. But today I had to ask him something important. When he took off his outer clothes and hung them on the hanger, I gathered courage and turned to him. "I beg your pardon, Duke." But suddenly it stopped. And if he has not yet accepted the title officially, I didn't even know how to address him properly. "I mean, sir." He silently looked back at me, looking darkly from under his forehead. I decided that this was a good sign to talk. In a pinch, it was good that he at least came back to listen to me. I wanted to ask about the war. "Wars?" he asked in surprise. He turned his whole body towards me, not understanding what exactly I wanted to know. What? Why is he acting like he's hearing this for the first time? I was too stunned. Does he really not know? Is this even possible? I heard that the Kingdom of Vios started a war. I was sure that the head of the Paladin Knights and the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Knights would be there. But what if they weren't? "Don't call something like this a war," he said calmly. His confidence really impressed me. He's a very brave warrior if he says so, although looking at him, it was becoming scary just to stand next to him. Well, of course, the Duke won't even consider it a kind of war. I think it makes sense he fought against much stronger opponents. The Kingdom of Vios is probably too weak compared to us. I boldly agreed when I heard about 300 gold, but war is still war. And so I tried to improve our relationship to increase my chances of survival. I happily felt that my percentage increased significantly just from a few words. Smiling busily with a hint of growing joy, I enthusiastically said, "Then let me be under your protection, my master." His face suddenly petrified and became very menacing. Involuntarily, I even heard something crack. My joy started to fade little by little, but inside, I was puzzled by his reaction and it hurt me a lot. Why are you telling me this? I need to calm down and think about the chances of life, and I decided to explain to him what the matter is. I will also take part in the war, in the person of a healer. His face crunched again for some reason. It's paper. How can he make such sounds? Coming close to me, he said quite sharply, "Don't stand in my way there." His words sent chills down my spine. How many times I sat next to you like a statue, so that you fell asleep, and even after everything you tell me not to stand in your way. My chances of survival have plummeted. I smiled at my thoughts. How can I tell him about this? After all, I am much lower than him in rank, I remember it. When he finally lay down to sleep, I sat hunched over, trying not to move, but he still mumbled in his sleep that he was noisy. Probably if he had a remote control, the only button on it was mute. 10 days passed imperceptibly. Looking at the sky, I thought about the war and what trials I should expect in the future. I wonder how everything will happen there in general, whether it will really be so safe. It is hard to imagine that it will be easy, because war is war. It is pain, suffering, and loss. When I imagine that a person is dying in front of me, it becomes very creepy to me, and I could not help but think about it. Fear surrounded me like a web. I heard that you are going to war. I suddenly heard a voice and shuddered. These two boys were talking among themselves. "Yes, I'm going," the other one answered him. "Don't let yourself be stabbed in your sleep," joked the first, haha. The second laughed in response. "In any case, it's much better than if you were stabbed while you were awake." I listened to them in a daze and thought that everyone around me was so calm, unlike me. Kashmir, the 12th, will surely go down in history with his most peaceful rule of the empire. But outside the empire, wars, big or small, never end. However, we dominate by sending our warriors to seize lands and expand territory. And besides, the young head of the Paladin Knights, about whom there are only good and good rumors, songs and tales are written about his strength and courage. And the Grim Reaper is the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Knights, about whom other stories are told, really grim, like himself and his nickname. They both took part in the suppression of various peoples, before they always returned with triumph and victory. A hero, I whispered. I had heard very little about him, so it was difficult for me to imagine him. Although the leader of the Paladin Knights is always referred to as a hero. Duke Willard's nickname, contrary to this, is the Grim Reaper. I was surprised when I heard even among the people they were divided into dark and light heroes. The boys played battles, dividing into two opposing heroes. They both contributed equally, so why are they perceived so differently in the world? The children scared each other. If you cry, the Grim Reaper will come for you. It was scary but not clear. He was considered an icon of the Empire's terror. I heard a story that Duke Willard had another son, but one day he was found dead in his own mansion. At the same time, the head of the family died in a similar way. Yes, now that I think about it, this case seems pretty strange to me. After that incident, a huge scandal broke out in the Empire. However, no one could ignore what happened later. 3 years have passed since then. Now, at a time when it is raining on the territory of the estate, everyone remembers decorative daggers stained with blood. I don't believe the rumors, although it is strange that he always comes on rainy days. It will be necessary to think more carefully about it. At this moment, I was already climbing the stairs, which creaked under my feet, to the carriage, going on a journey. In the carriage, I grabbed Lily's hand and leaned against her. "We are going to war," I said sadly. "When there are so many people on the square, it feels like we have already returned with victory." Looking out the window, Lily calmly answered, "I repeat it to you once again. We don't even have a chance to lose, Renee. Because the hero and the Reaper will be with us." The rumble of iron wheels on the cobblestones put a sad mood on me. I was afraid not of losing at all, but of someone's death before my eyes. And if something does happen, it will definitely not be Vio's fault. And because of the fact that a conflict may arise between the leaders of the Paladin Knights and the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Knights, is it possible that Renee will become the cause of their conflict? In general, such a scenario is quite possible. We slowly approached the surroundings of the city. The city and a calm, fleeting life were left behind. Next, we had to go through the gate. Well, the time has come. Looking out the window, we'll have to meet everyone before we leave, right? "Yes," answered Lily. "We have almost arrived." I saw the silhouettes of people ahead. They were warriors who were going on a campaign. There were a lot of them, and they were all in different forms, which were very different from each other. This golden form belonged to Abnell's Paladin Knights. It is light and bright. Their whole appearance indicated that they were warriors of light. And other warriors in the form of indigo color, they were Nickel Knights, brave and ruthless warriors whom everyone feared. We saw that Abnell's priests had also arrived, and it seemed that they were impatiently waiting for someone and looking. Amidst all this chaos, there was a palpable sense of excitement and anticipation for the events we were soon to approach. Oh Lord, we were late. On our very first appearance, I jumped headlong out of the carriage and ran as hard as I could to the crowd. I was very nervous, but when we ran to the crowd, I had the feeling that we were not too late. No one was even paying attention to us. But in any case, we are the only ones who came from Elnor, so we had to report our arrival. Lily pulled my dress. "Look over there," Lily whispered in my ear, pointing to the side. I looked around and grunted in surprise. I saw him, hero. This man is the leader of the Paladin Knights, so we must report to him that we have arrived. Approaching him, I looked at him enthusiastically, because I had never seen him. I could only imagine what he really was like from hearsay and stories. Just look at his hair. I knew there were a lot of blondes among the members of the Royal Empire, but this is the first time I've seen such a color suit someone so well. Elviniraz Kashmir is the surname of the imperial family, which means light of the world. It coincided that Elviniraz is the light of people. Now that I have met him in person, I can say with confidence that he lives up to his name. Is this the same Abnel sword that was forged 300 years ago? Why does it suit him so well? I can't say that I haven't met handsome guys since entering this fantasy universe, but this is the first time I've had such a feeling. After all, he looks simply stunning. He is the first after Duke Willard. An image of a gloomy duke suddenly appeared in my imagination for a second. Although I have the same impression of him as a zombie, always gloomy and not satisfied, and constantly muttering. And then our eyes met with Duke Elvinraz. His eyes looked directly at me, as if piercing me and penetrating my very soul. Maybe he can also sense people like his master. Is it possible to hear my thoughts? That would be very embarrassing. He headed in our direction and asked, "Surely you are priests from Elnor?" His voice was calm and gentle, and his face showed no emotion that's endurance. "We are very glad to meet you," Lily and I muttered, and my voice trembled at the end. We were fascinated and confused and did not know where to put our hands, how to stand, and how to look at the great hero. "And you? Probably Renessa Elnor?" he asked. "Ah, so it's me." I was completely confused. I couldn't look away from his eyes. They seemed to be smiling at me, and I noticed that his eyes were also shining with gold. I am sure that if an artist painted him in the future, he would not use gold paint for his eyes, but would melt down real gold to create an authentic image. "What a charming person! I have heard so much about you, Princess Renessa," he suddenly said. "Thank you very much," I answered quietly, and bowed my head in front of him. Wait, what? What did he say? Does he know me? What exactly did he hear about me? Even if he knows about my divine power, he must have met more unusual people in Abnel. I was clearly pleased with the fact that he knew me at all. "I have also heard a lot about you," I answered, smiling with my signature business smile. Lily hit me painfully in the side, so that I almost fell. It really hurt that I screamed, and I felt embarrassed in front of the Duke. Was my answer too strange? This is normal communication. Why did she push me? At this moment, my nerves were tense like strings. "It is an honor for me," laughed the Duke. His smile and laugh were so casual, he looked at the two strange girls in front of him, who were behaving strangely and didn't get angry at all. I suddenly felt sad and ashamed. My face became drawn and gloomy. My mood went nowhere. I don't know why this happened, but I don't feel better even when such a handsome man smiles at me. You've probably already heard about it." The Duke casually continued the conversation. "The territory towards which we are moving, the western border of the Empire, is completely captured by Vios. To begin with, we will withdraw troops to the outskirts, surrounding the enemy to support our position before launching an attack. If everything goes well, we will break into the territory of Vios. At this time, the healers will have to save my hands clenched from the fear and responsibility that once again gripped me. The lives of people and the fate of the further development of events depend on me." Panic and sad thoughts seized me again, because people can die. No, they definitely can die if I do not cope well with my duties. It worries me a lot, and even started to make me a little nauseous. I'm just starting to calm down, but all this serious talk is making me nervous again. I was too depressed, and even though the High Priest and Lily said everything was fine, others were also calm. I'm the only one so scared of something. "Priestess, there's nothing to worry about," said the Duke in a calm voice. His eyes looked at me so gently that under this look one could not be afraid of anything. But I was so deep in my thoughts that I couldn't hear what he was saying to me. I must have lost my mind. The prince is saying something to me, and my thoughts are flying in the clouds. I must have become too bold after the night spent with the Duke. If it turns out I didn't hear anything, I won't be kicked out, right? "You have nothing to worry about, really," continued the prince. "We are Paladin Knights. We swear by the name of Kashmir and Abnel." He solemnly folded his hands on his chest. For the speech, it was so exciting because he is in front of me swore an oath. I was surprised by his action and behavior. "We will protect you, priestess, with our radiance." He smiled, and everything around lit up like a bright sun. I wanted to believe his words. I suddenly calmed down, even though I had been feeling too depressed recently. Although we had a supposedly normal conversation, I smiled reassuringly. Closing my eyes, I tried to establish peace and mental balance. I was infinitely grateful to the prince for his wonderful, soothing words. My chances of survival increased, not because of the duke, but because of my encounter with the leader of the Paladin Knights. Maybe it will be a pleasant trip for me. A few hours later, when we had already started the hike, I discovered that this was my big mistake. I was tired of walking and was suffocating from the heat-burning sun. I was holding on to anything I could hold on to and anything I could lean on. I was so sick, I felt like I was going to pass out. I kept thinking only about the war, but I forgot something very important. Our destination is the Western Codon. They say that the area there is mountainous, and the mountains have several hundred peaks. I began to doubt whether we really had a hike or some special training. I was already too exhausted and did not have the strength to go home. I want to go home, I moaned, pounding the mountain with my fist. Even if you don't have a home? Lily looked at me questioningly, realizing that she was not supporting me, but only worsening my condition. I burst into tears at her words. I understood that she was right, but I asked her, "Lily, could you not imagine that the temple is my home, and I already want to return to him?" What? 2 months? After 5 hours of hiking, I wanted to return. Take the hell away! I cursed, but I walked up the stones. It was very difficult. The mountains were steep. The stones were constantly falling down from under my feet. It was getting harder and harder to climb. I knew it would be difficult, but not this much I wanted to scream and call for help. It was only the 4th day of the hike, and we had passed only 2 mountains. Apart from the walking, everything was going great. First, we came through the mountains to the residential areas and rested there. After that, we checked our condition before going on a hike. I kept thinking about the reward. 300 gold, 300 gold, I repeated like a mantra, and that calmed me down a little and gave me strength. Our military went on the attack soon after that. I anxiously looked into the distance, waiting for news and possible wounded. Fortunately, there were only 2 victims who sought help. Lily was bandaging the wounded arm, and I had already decided that the victory was much easier than I thought. The 4th day passed just as calmly, and we all continued to climb these mountains. Was the economy of Vios in such a bad state that they decided to fight for these mountains? It seems that it would be wiser for them to attack a less armed country. Unfortunately, the empire was attacked. But there is a reason that the empire always remained invincible for hundreds of years. I couldn't believe I was so worried about the war, when after all I do is climb mountains. And how does the healers work in general? First, they wait while the military soldiers scout the territory. We have nothing to do at this time. We sit and wait, or go for a walk. Second, when the soldiers return, the healers must heal them and give them new strength and energy. Usually, this is done by priests of Abnal. Other healers awkwardly stand aside, not knowing where to turn and how to help. Third, the healers all move together to be safe. We were always called in one place to go further on the campaign together. We were not allowed to separate or go alone. But even so, I was still very tired, and beyond my endurance, I decided that I should definitely notice when Lily started training. Every time I think about 300 gold, I get a rush, energy, and strength. After all, it was strange to remember that the war seemed terrible. In that case, I will most likely die due to my poor stamina. Maybe it's because in my past life I lived in a peaceful country. It turns out that a healer can only use a limited amount of power per day. It was obvious that if you used up the reserve of your powers, something terrible would happen. In order to avoid such situations, there is a whole set of rules set by the rulers for healers during wartime. To be sure that the healer is able to use his powers in emergency situations, they should always assess the situation and resort to force only if necessary. I rejoiced at such conclusions, but decided that I could help myself. In any case, the loss of my ability to walk would greatly harm everyone, and this could not be allowed. That is why I held back until this moment. But if you think like that, the immediate danger is a collapse. Lily suddenly approached me. "I was looking for you. I was wondering where you went." "Reconnaissance before this was not so difficult," said Lily, "but it will be even more difficult when we get closer to the mountains." "Why?" "Too cool. I was surprised. As it turns out, it was not difficult yet, but it will be more difficult in the future. Yes, but also that there are many caves where you can hide. Of course, I answered sadly, realizing that from this moment on, there will be more wounded. And when that happens, I will no longer have the opportunity to heal my tired legs. You need to hold on. Even steeper mountains? Even more severe? We camped at the foot of one of the high mountains and waited for the military to inform us whether we could move on. If 12 out of 20 are their family, of course it will be much easier for them, thought Lily, tying the dress on my back. We sat in the tent and gathered strength and energy. They are just as good in mountain hikes. Is it fair that even their endurance should be reduced? They have been to war many times, so they have much more experience. That's all, finished Lily with a sigh, and I went outside. Now that I think about it, doesn't the main member of the expedition have 10 years of experience in such campaigns? Rise, Priest Varsi interrupted my thoughts. The soldiers should have already returned from reconnaissance. We were tired, but barely left the tent, yawning and trying to stretch our arms and legs. Looking at the high, snow-capped mountains, I thought, how are we going to get up there tomorrow? And today, we are already so high the problem, most likely, lies in this, and not in the war itself. Suddenly, I heard a shout, "Healer, hurry!" The scream was frantic and full of pain and desperation. It gave me goosebumps from that scream. Is this from the camp? I asked when the healers ran past me, ahead of each other, wanting to help the injured. I saw how the head of the Paladin Knights was talking to his subordinate, and I tried to find out from him what happened. I stood behind everyone and did not hear or see what was happening. Therefore, not knowing the situation, I decided that it was better for me not to take part in it for the time being. When I saw the picture that opened, I was shocked. The wounded continued to scream and call for help from the healer. I was shocked. I couldn't move. The scouts walked barely on their feet, holding on to each other with their last strength, and crying for help. Blood gushed from their wounds, which soaked their clothes, and it seemed that blood was coming from all directions. "We urgently need a healer," they were already whispering imploringly. I looked back at them and saw the face of war. That's what it is. Pain, suffering, blood. There were a lot of wounded. Almost everyone had some kind of wound, strangely enough. But they did not abandon any of their soldiers, and those who had at least some strength to walk carried the wounded on their arms and shoulders. "What happened?" I asked excitedly, running up to the Duke. "We were taken by surprise," he answered restrainedly. But tension was felt. Maybe they were hiding in the east, so they thought that the unarmed knights who went to the west were not harmed. It was sad and painful for him to watch the suffering of his wounded soldiers. "Where is Priest Varsi?" he asked. I answered that he was not there. He went on an errand. "Then heal him," he said, looking at the wounded man. "He is sick. Heal him immediately." Blood ran down his forehead. He moaned and begged for help. It was hard to watch, and some action needed to be taken immediately. After all, I am a healer, and it is time to show my power in action. With a cry, I rushed to him to save him and relieve him of his suffering. I bent over the wounded man to examine him and understand the severity of the injury, and to choose methods of first aid. The wounded man kept quiet so as not to disturb me, but it seemed that his body froze and stopped, waiting for help and a result. The prince stood and looked at me with hope, quietly said, "Heal him, please." It seemed that the life of the wounded knight had taken over him completely, and this was his only desire. We heard a murmuring noise that briefly distracted our attention. Where it came from was not clear, but everyone turned to this sound, trying to understand what it was. I stood looking at the knight and did not understand why me. I was confused by this thought. Why did he turn to me? After all, he is the leader. He should have chosen any of the healers. "I will do it," I resolutely exclaimed, rejecting all doubts and insecurity in my own strength. I decided to do whatever the prince asked me to do. "This is how I know that the priest Warsi can completely cure him," said the prince. He was mulling over something, considering the options, although the options weren't really many. "Renessa takes over his treatment right away." I was shocked by these words, and at the same time I was pleased by these words. After all, I became a priestess only 3 years ago. Obviously, Priest Warsi had more experience compared to me, so why me? But the prince personally asked me, so I can't just ignore his order, and it's necessary to save this man as soon as possible. I crouched down next to the wounded man and began to whisper prayers that would help the suffering and wounded man. I tried to abstract myself from everyone and everything that was happening around me, trying to focus only on the wounded fighter. All the others watched me with interest and quietly whispered to each other. I tried not to pay attention to it, giving my strength and energy to the victim. My hands were glowing from the flow of energy that I was giving to the fighter, and it must have been an exciting sight that everyone watched with such interest. Later, when we talked about it with Lily, she suggested that it was most likely that the leader of the Paladin Knights could sense the level of the priest's divine power, which is why he approached me. He apparently noticed that your divine powers are greater than Priest Warsis, and therefore, instead of exhausting him by forcing him to spend 90% of his divine power, isn't it more effective to tire you out by spending only 30% of your power? I know that. I said I wonder if that's why he summoned me, even though I'm from a very small temple, and this despite the fact that they already have healers from the capital temple. A wounded knight whom I healed approached me and began to sincerely thank me. I woke up 2 days ago. Only thanks to you, I sincerely thank you for this. I just waved my hand as if it was such a small thing. Don't mention it. Let only the light protect you from now on. Folded my hands, I bowed, accepting thanks. Other priests whispered behind my back. It was strange and disgusting to look at the fact that they came to war, thinking that everything would be somehow different. This person and their leadership must have been humiliated because of me, I reasoned. Was this wounded priest Abnel? Priestess unknown to anyone. What are you going to do? Lily asked. I don't know, I unintentionally. At first I thought that they would call me to the roof. It meant when offenders are called to a quiet place and mocked. And maybe there is nothing wrong with the fact that I drew their attention to me. We approached the kitchen, where dinner was being prepared, and rather large portions of soup were poured, and bread was lying around. Having taken my portion, I took a bite of the fragrant bread with pleasure, but suddenly I felt someone's hand take it out of my mouth. Priest Varsi is not feeling well. He needs to eat more to recover. The priests stood opposite me, but openly laughed at me, taking my bread from me. You don't mind, Priestess Renessa? I thought darkly. How childish it is to steal my food. I know that people with great divine power recover relatively faster than other people, laughed one of the girls. That is why I believe that everything will be fine with the Priestess Renessa. I thought that this was not quite true, because my legs would not be shaking from the long walk if it really was. At that moment, the long-haired boy began to cough, clearly showing that he was unwell. I became his school. I got up and gave him my bread. It was like some dedication. But he continued to cough, and I just let them go. But it was the 3rd time today. But I was sure that I would not die of hunger, and the bread did not look very appetizing. Putting my hands to my chest, I smiled politely and answered, I hope that you will recover soon. It would be nice to know that I will benefit someone. Yeah, I'll just give in to you, long-haired boy, I thought, looking at his back. He just left without even thanking me, but he shuddered from my act and smile. I went with my trail to Lily, holding her carefully so as not to spoil my food and to gain at least some energy. Lily sat and waited for me, looking at me with interest. But silently observing this whole situation, she had already begun to eat, and breaking off her piece of bread, she looked intently at my tray, suspecting that everything was not well. Let's eat, I said cheerfully, approaching Lily. What did she talk to them about for so long, she thought, looking at how I eagerly took hold of the spoon. Wait, because she hasn't eaten any bread for several days. You don't tell me that you give your food to the priests of Abnel? She decided to ask me, not expecting such a question. I froze with a spoon in my mouth, huh? I looked around in surprise. Did they do that? Lily asked menacingly. I saw how anger took hold of her. She darkened from the tension that was building up in her. Huh? I stared at her in surprise. This. I didn't know what to answer her, but her appearance clearly scared me a lot. Lily stood up determinedly and clenched her fists. I gasped in fright, trying to understand what she was going to do. Lily silently turned around and headed towards Abnel's priests. No need, I shouted after her. You can't, Lily. But she heard me without stopping for a moment. Abnel's priests were having lunch sitting at the table and raised their heads when Lily approached them. "Good afternoon," she greeted politely, involuntarily clenching her hands into fists. "I just saw something extremely shameful," she began the conversation. "Can I ask you one question?" One of the girls openly laughed and said, Maybe you mean this bread priestess Renessa. She kindly donated it to us, as Priest Varsi has not been feeling well lately." "Did you donate?" asked Lily with a mysterious smile. She clearly did not like the answer of this priestess, and she decided to bring them to clean water. "Yes, she sacrificed," repeated the priestess, again smiling slyly and mockingly. Her whole appearance showed that she is not afraid of anything and will repeat her version to the last, and she is not gnawed by the pangs of conscience. Oh no. A whole bunch of people had already gathered around them, who were wondering what was going on. They whispered among themselves, trying to guess the reasons that led to the conflict. "Oh," I thought anxiously, "it was quite dangerous." Sweat ran down my forehead, feeling the danger. "What are you going to do, Lily?" Lily, calmly adjusting her glasses, firmly and clearly continued her speech. "I was taught that following God does not mean being happy, because you constantly involuntarily sacrifice something. Perhaps if they teach the same thing in Abnel, then surely they could also teach you how to profit from victims." People around them surrounded them and listened attentively to this lively conversation. The priestess from Abnel got up and, continuing to laugh, answered, "Oh, what are you doing? It's impossible. What is she trying to say? Aren't the basics of learning the same?" "Even if they were not priests," Lily continued, "this is a duty that everyone must fulfill." "Do your priests think differently?" the priestess from Abnel asked in surprise. "I'm sorry?" Not understanding what Lily was leading to. "You were talking about donations." Lily stretched in a smile, showing her confidence and arrogance towards them. "4 of you have already received your bread. However, you set your sights on her bread and asked her to share. Perhaps it would be more correct to call it extortion?" The crowd around them roared excitedly. "Oh, but I still don't think that Priest Abnel would go to such a thing. You guys are probably just a little confused, aren't you? Because it cannot be that the priests of Abnel do not understand the difference between donation and extortion." They began to whisper around, and the priestess Abnel had already lowered her head, trying not to show her shame. "This is absolutely impossible," exclaimed Lily, smiling with satisfaction, sure that her words were heard by everyone, and everyone made the right conclusions. "She has reawakened the ability for verbal combat," I thought bitterly, bowing my head. They should be examples of calmness, these priests, and not behave like children. If they have trouble working together, who will treat the wounded? "It's a pity that your priest is not well, but we hope for his speedy recovery," Lily said arrogantly, reaching for the bread of the boy who took it from me. Oh yes." The boy stared in surprise at Lily's hand, which suddenly snatched the bread from him. "Thank you," she said politely. "That is why everyone should also take care of themselves." With a happy face, Lily held the bread like a victory artifact. "Priestess Renee mentioned that you can regenerate using your own powers." It was a blow for the priest Abnel. On that day, he could not digest everything properly. If Warsa's priest is recovering so slowly, it's safe to worry about the others if they get sick too. Lily returned to me with the bread, smiling triumphantly, and handed it to me with the words, "Keep it." He didn't even touch it, I sincerely fed her. But I was a little embarrassed. I was even afraid of Lily, because her tenacity and stubbornness were second to none. She always found a way out of any situation. And if I had told her right away about the fact that my bread was constantly being taken away, she would have resolved this issue a long time ago. I will have to remember for the future so that I never annoy Lily, because the priests, huddled around their table, trembled with fear and shame. Suddenly, there were shouts and loud sighs. Someone shouted, "Ambush!" People were panicked. Shouts were heard from everywhere. "Carry more towels! There's a wounded man here!" Everyone gathered at the entrance of the tent, looking to see who was injured, and to help somehow. Everyone was tired, but they were ready to help the victim. Everyone around was whispering about an ambush, that the wounded man was shot with an arrow. Orders were heard to move him carefully at once, but this must be done very carefully. The wounded man sighed heavily in pain. It was felt that the further we moved away from the temple, the slower the reserve of strength replenished. The wounded man was in a lot of pain. His face was wasted. His arms were hanging weakly from the bed. Blood-soaked bandages lay around. In these steep mountains, it became more and more difficult not only to move, but also there were many more sudden ambushes. Of course, the healers themselves found themselves in a difficult situation. Someone called me by name. Priestess Renessa, you are responsible for serious injuries. I turned around in surprise and asked again, really? Wounded people came to me, for whom the strength of other priests was no longer enough, who were completely exhausted, and who themselves needed help. Can we ask you to patch us up? They said with hope in their voices. Others no longer have the strength and the only one left again? I couldn't say that I was powerless either. I felt relatively fine, therefore she said out loud, yes, of course, I will take care of it. Do they turn to me because I was then singled out in front of everyone? After all, I was a healer approved by the leader of the Paladin Knights himself. There were a lot of them. They all needed help. They all begged me for help, I thought in a panic. How many are there? Finally, I managed with everyone and provided help. I just warned everyone that healing with divine powers does not mean that you are completely fine. So you should be careful. For the next few days. I fell down on the floor without strength and thought that it's a pity that you can't drink alcohol and coffee during the hike. I needed a break. Behind me, I heard footsteps and a voice. Thank you, priestess. You are truly amazing. I turned to the voice in surprise, thinking, me? Awesome? Compared to other people, I have nothing special. For example, someone who is really stunning. I suddenly stopped mid-sentence when I saw the person standing behind me. It was the gloomy Reaper Duke Willard. Today, he was not injured at all. He has never needed treatment since the beginning of our expedition. His appearance was quite fresh and healthy. Looking after him, I thought about the leader of the Paladin Knights, because he also did not need the services of healers. Although all the others were wounded at least once, as I thought, they are simply unsurpassed. Running out of my tent into the fresh air, I jumped up joyfully, feeling that I was alive. Sitting indoors, after all, was very tiring. Priestess Renessa, someone called me. I nervously looked around. Did they find me here? I just wanted to be alone, in the fresh air, to restore my strength and energy. It was Sir Gadriel. He was smiling cheerfully. Oh, sorry, I didn't want to scare you, he said cheerfully. Everything is fine, but what happened? Does something hurt? I asked worriedly. No, I just wanted to thank you. Look here, priestess. He unwrapped the bandages on his hand and showed his wound, which had almost healed, leaving a small scar. This is all thanks to your treatment, he said proudly. Oh, indeed, your shoulder has healed, I joyfully exclaimed, clapping my hands in delight. I was really pleased to see the result of my treatment. After all, the wound was very deep, and if I was even a little late, the result would have been clearly deplorable. Will you have to go scouting again? I suddenly asked gloomily. On his face was reflected a fright mixed with fear, but he nodded his head affirmatively. Yes. Are you not afraid? I'm starting to worry a little relative to the other healers. I was fine. It had been a long time since I slept properly. I sat down upset, but I almost cried. Looking at the sleeping, exhausted priests, I keep thinking about what tomorrow will bring. Everyone expected an easy war, but for some reason, every day, more and more people were injured. Am I the only one who cares? I'm not worried about injuries, Gadriel shouted joyfully, because I know that the priestess will heal me. No, just be more careful and avoid injuries. Ser Gadriel smiled gently at me, and his smile meant to me that he was a fierce fighter who would go forward and stop at nothing.